Hi, Troy Love. It's so great to see you again.
Hello there. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be with you.
So I didn't mention before we hit record, but Troy also hosts the Attachment Wound Work Group. So on our platform, he is gracious and alternating Thursdays does a drop-in group that's free for betrayed partners on attachment wounds and voices of shame, etc. And on Friday mornings, he works with male addicts on those same types of issues. Those are both free. Separately, and he does this on the fourth Wednesday of the month. But separately on our site, there's a paid, a low cost online work group that is 90 minutes per week for 6 weeks, and that's really digging in deeper, going through things, with a group of guys over Zoom. So, but it is live facilitated. This is not just watching videos or something. So it really gives people an opportunity to connect and really do the deeper work and take that work to their therapist. Many therapists suggest that their clients participate in our online work groups because it helps them, get more information. And I always say it's good fodder to take to, there's gleanings and learnings, and then you take that to your therapist and you can unpack it even more. So all of this is just designed to be helpful and supportive on the journey. So, and I saw a question pop in, so we're gonna um, oh, it's just nice. Thanks for being here in the basement with your blanket. Yes, I am in my mom's basement with a blanket because it's cold where I am, but it's all good. Thank you. I'm glad to be here too. It's so, but any questions? Oh, otherwise I'm going to ask you, we talk about, I mentioned the Thursday morning drop-in group for betrayed partners. And I think it's interesting to talk about the shame from a betrayed partner standpoint. So would you just
Yeah, sure. So
feel
there's
free to, yeah.
so there's a they experience a lot of shame in a different way. I mean, one of the biggest shames, especially when they first find out, is they don't feel like they can tell anybody. Who are they going to tell? And there's some stories that their shadows of shame tell them. One is that people are going to think they're stupid if they stay in the relationship. Why don't they just leave? Another is people are going to think they're stupid because they didn't see it previously. And so why couldn't they have figured that out? They're going to think bad things about their partner. Their partner's creepy, and like a child molester or something like that. And so they're afraid of what people are going to think about their partner. And so on top of the crushing news of being betrayed, and I don't feel like I can, the reality that I thought I was living in is not actually the reality that I was living in, and I didn't know that. And so that betrayal of that, the fear of sharing that with other people is pretty profound. And so a lot of partners carry that around in silence, and that's one of the beauties of having these drop-in groups, is that when they go there, they hear other people's stories and they realize, wow, I'm not alone in this. And it's a beautiful experience. And um the people that are there understand, like there's an understanding of that shame, and there's a respect for the stories that everybody has, for the most part. So that's why I think a lot of partners don't they don't go out and share it with everybody. They don't know how it's going to be perceived, and they're having a hard time dealing with it already, and then they don't need extra burden of other people's judgment.
And I think they also do self-judgment of the what's wrong with me that I didn't see this. Um, and even the comparisons of like, and I'm going to use he for addicts and she for just for pronoun clarification, ease of discussion. But what's wrong with me that he's choosing to do that? There must be, a deficit in me, and that's not the case. But that can get caught up in people's heads too.
Right. That's a huge one that they they deal with it. Well, there must be something wrong with me. And especially at the beginning, they may try to change themselves. They may try to, well, if only I did this more, or if only I did this less, then that would change it. And it's not actually about you. Um, and so that doesn't really work, but it's understandable why they do that. They're really trying to, if they could just figure out that thing and fix it, then it would be we all be good. So
Yeah, I know people who have had like cosmetic surgery because if I just achieve this specific look, then it's going to be okay. So, okay. Can you give feedback about problematic attachment wounds of abandonment being triggered in my partner? We are over 3 years into this. I betrayed her. She is doing her work, and so am I. CSAT and 12-step and other therapists. She still rages a lot. I've been working a lot on setting limits and taking timeouts. Or she throws me out of the room or house for a day and a half. But whether I set the time out and follow it or she throws me out, the abandonment wound is still triggered and it hurts her a lot and spirals out. So I am not so I work not to set timeouts much if I can avoid it, but often I can't. So to protect myself and set appropriate limits around inappropriate rage expression, or our kids are hearing it. And this person's been sober for 34 months. So thanks for sharing that. That's a difficult situation.
mhm. So what I'm hearing is that your wife has an abandonment wound. And so when you do the timeouts or you pull away in order to try and protect yourself from the rage, that actually fuels the rage even more. So I don't know how, it sounds like your wife is doing some work, and hopefully she's maybe doing some work around around that. What I tell people is what we're angry about is never what we're really angry about. So if there's a lot of rage going on, this is much deeper than just your betrayal. There's a lot going on that she may not have even uh, an insight about yet. She may not have gone there, and it's easy to put it all on you because you're the one who did the betrayal, and I appreciate that you own that. So it's easy to put it on you, but that's not necessarily the whole package. There's more to the story. And so when I noticed that when I was raging, if there was a lot going on inside of me that I wasn't aware of, and my rage was really based in fear and in an attempt to try and control the situation. And what it did, so it's ironic because I have an abandonment wound. As I would rage, I would push the people that I needed the most away from me because they were scared, they were terrified. And then I would feel more alone. I would feel more abandoned, and then I would get more angry. And I realized I'm doing that. Like, I need you to come closer, but I'm not creating enough safety for you to feel like you can be vulnerable with me. Regardless of what you did, that doesn't mean that you didn't play a role in some things, and or that you're absolutely perfect and I'm the horrible person. I realize that that's the pattern. There's deep fear underneath all of that. So for you, being able to hold, I know it sounds hard, but when she's not raging, to maybe have some conversations about the fear. Can you tell me more about the fear of abandonment? What does it feel like for you when people pull away, when they stop being present? What happens, and how can I support you before we get to that rage place? Like, is there some signals that can you can recognize or put out there so that when you, because I'm sure she hates going there, I'm sure she feels awful, and so I don't think she wants to go there. And so how can we come up with a way that you don't have to explode? Like, we can try to take care of it before we get to that, and maybe having some dialogue around that. And if you're doing couples therapy, maybe your therapist could help you have that dialogue, because I'm sure that neither of you like that pattern. But I can hear the love that you have for her, and I appreciate that. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I was thinking even with the couples therapy, maybe even role play it out, because like talking about it doesn't always cement so that you can pull it back out in the moment. But if you've practiced, like instead of doing this, can we try this? It could be something like that. Yeah, and I did with the rage, it does push people away. And I know, like, because I have struggled with that. I haven't, I did my therapy, and I have not struggled with that since I really did that deeper work. I'm so incredibly grateful that component, not that I'm perfect, but that piece has not been in, has not been an issue now for quite a while. But it was always, for me, it was hurt. I'm sure there was fear too, but I was feeling hurt. I was feeling abandoned, and so I'm incredibly angry, and it felt so much more powerful to push it away and vent on, wanting to vent. I did at least learn to keep my mouth shut, and just, but I shut myself off. So yes, when I wanted to connect, because I was feeling abandoned, I in effect removed myself so I didn't say anything that I had to make amends for, so I was doing the exact opposite thing of what I really wanted, so getting help around that. And maybe, it may be, I found EMDR to be helpful for me. I'm not saying it's a panacea and will help everyone, but on that specific issue, that was hugely helpful. I was like, I can't believe it made such a change on that issue that it would come up with ostensibly with no warning, but but it would feel like it came out of nowhere and it was just there and, out of control. So, but I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're sober 34 months. You have, there's hope that the two of you can be on a healing path, and, but it's got speed bumps along the way. So, but I'm glad you're asking the questions. Okay, let me get to the next one. How do I get past the pain of the betrayal and the pain of my essay husband not wanting to take any steps to heal himself in our relationship? Married 14 years, D-Day 12 years ago, and I'm still holding on to the family, but I'm getting to the bottom. I'm holding my boundaries, but it's so difficult living this way. Any thoughts would be helpful. Thank you.
So, I guess it would depend on what your definition of getting past the pain of betrayal is. Um, there's a difference between the past, getting past healing from the betrayal and trusting somebody. There's a difference between the two. Um, so let me talk about the trust first. From what you're saying, you don't trust your partner. You don't trust your husband. He's not demonstrating any desire to do any steps towards dealing with his things or getting better. And so what I hear is that it feels like a lot of that is now landed on your shoulders. And you said I'm holding on to my family, I'm trying to keep everything together, and I'm exhausted. I'm doing my best with my boundaries, but I'm alone in this relationship. I can't trust him. That's what I'm hearing. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but that's what I'm hearing. So the challenge with that is I can't trust somebody unless they, Stephen R. Covey says, you can't talk yourself out of a problem you behaved yourself into. You have to behave yourself out of a problem that you behaved yourself into. So I can't trust what you say. I need to see what you do. And if he's not doing anything, it would be unwise to trust him because he's not doing anything to do that. So that's problem number one. You don't trust him, which then prevents you from being able to have safety and be vulnerable with him, which is really crappy in a relationship with somebody. And so then there's a lot of pain. There's a pain of loss, there's pain of neglect, there's pain of betrayal, there's pain of abandonment. All of those are incredibly painful. So part of that is, what do you end up believing about yourself as a result of all that pain? Do you end up believing that you're not enough, that you can't do this, that you're powerless? Because if those negative core beliefs and those shame-based statements are running the programming of your life, that perpetuates the shame for you. So being able to go to groups or finding a therapist who can help you to change those belief systems to a place where I am enough and I matter and I'm worthy and all of those things gives you the foundation for you then to make the choices for yourself that will bring you the peace that you're looking for. And I don't know what that will look like. For some, that's staying in the relationship and holding that, but their energy is different. For others, it's saying, well, I'm doing this for the kids, but once the kids are older, I'm out. Or for others, it's different than that. So, but the biggest thing that I'm trying to tell you is if you can connect with your light in your worth and that place of truth, and sometimes we need help because we can't see it, so we go to drop-in groups or therapy or other things where people help us see it. You connect with that that gives you the power that you need to be able to make the choices that will then heal the pain of what you're feeling.
Yeah, and I don't think you get past it. I think you get through it. And I hear a lot of grief in all of this as well. And grieving is a process. But you're grieving the loss of the relationship you hoped for. You're grieving the loss of the husband you thought you had. You're grieving the loss of the family that could have been, if he was really willing to show up. So I think for you, healthy boundaries, but modeling those for your children as well. If it's one of those things where, that was one of the compelling things for me in my personal life is like, what am I modeling? And, what I want my children to take what I'm showing them. So I really worked on making sure that, my walk matched my talk, so doing the work. But for you, I hate when addicts. I said this recently to someone, but it's like it's the worst place to be of supposedly not acting out, but also not really doing recovery. Because we talk about dry drunk, related to alcohol, and it's like people can be mean and nasty because they're not using the alcohol, to numb out, but they're also not really doing recovery and being happy, joyous, and free. So it's a horrible spot to be in. So I feel sad for him that he's chosen that, and I feel for you and your children that that's what you're integrated with. So yeah, what Troy said about the decision is always everyone's of what to do, but healthy boundaries are for your safety. They're not punishment against him. And how do you take care of you? Lots of people stay with their addict, but they create the safety zone. So they've got the people to call, they've got the support. So what he's doing, what his actions are less problematic to them, than the all-consuming focus or having it interrupt everyone else's life. You and your children can have, this is our life, and he interacts or he doesn't. But this is our life. So I think I would really encourage you. We've got some previously recorded webinars. Debbie McCrae did 2-part series on grief, and it's the process. And she talked, did a really good job of talking through all of that. That may be useful for you, because even if you stay in the relationship, there's still, grief associated with that, and it's not linear. I think it's really easy to go, okay, I'm done being angry, so now I'm going to go to step 2, and it's not. It's like this, but it's a journey. You get to a different place, and you're not alone. There's lots of, in fact, even here's a thought. The Moving On Alone drop-in group on Thursdays, it's for people who are contemplating. And when I hear you saying I'm almost at the bottom, it may be a safe place for you to just go air those feelings of, I don't know if I can keep doing this, whatever is true for you. So the Betrayed Partner Moving On Alone is Thursdays, is for people who have been left, or are considering. And so that might be another safe zone for you. Okay. So Troy, to the first question, a response exactly. So as you push away and feel more abandoned in an attempt to control the situation and deal with the fear, you end up more alone and more hurt. But as you said, I don't feel safe anymore. So I have to put up armor in those situations. So she says, I am distant and not really using empathy in those moments. It's like a catch-22. So any practical tools, that you can Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how
Go ahead.
would you read the second question? Because I'm going to put them
Oh,
together.
okay. Shame and fear are two big, huge hurdles for me to get close to my wife as we try to heal. What is your advice on how to navigate and get close, empathetic with my wife? Okay, please do.
Okay, so I do a finding peace in relationships class a couple of times a year, and right now we have some couples in there, and I was helping the guy who is an addict who has had a slip hold space while his wife was sharing her pain. And uh, so I give some really simple tools, like just repeat the last 3 to 5 words that she said. And she said, I feel so alone. And he said, you feel so alone? And she burst into tears.
Oh.
And then he said to me, how is this helping?
Mm.
He's like, how is this helping? And his tendency is to go into rescue mode. Let me fix it.
Mm.
Let me make promises. And let me tell, let me, and I'm like, it helps that you're just holding space. So just hold space. I could see it, like, especially if you're a guy. John Gottman's research shows that men do not handle stress in this kind of emotions very well. We have cortisol running all through our body during this thing, and we feel itchy, and we want to get up, and we want to move, and we want to like fix it so it just will go away because it feels so uncomfortable. And so I could see that as he's sitting there, and all the other men are watching, and they're like, freaking out too. So it's a thing. So notice it's, but what you can do is you have to the okay, men in general, not all men, but men in general are not that great with empathy in the first place. Okay, and part of that is for the reason I just said. It requires you to feel things. And if you're an addict, we've been doing a really good job of trying to not feel things for a really long time. So now you want me to feel things? That's like really uncomfortable. So it requires you, number one, to be able to feel things and then to put words to those emotions. That's step number one. And so when I've had guys tell me that when their wives get emotional, it's like emotional terrorism. They're like, they just are like, feel like, I don't know what to do. Okay, so you got to build some tolerance for sharing emotions, which groups are a really great way to do that. Sharing, allowing yourself to feel a little bit. Okay, so being able to lean into that and then not rescue, to just hold space and say things like, that sounds really hard, that sounds so painful, tell me more. And here's the secret with empathy. The way that you have empathy is you think to yourself, okay, what's the wound that's being triggered? Let's say it's rejection, for example, or betrayal. Was there ever a time in my life that I felt rejected? What did that feel like for me? What emotional words would I use to describe what that felt like for me? Or was there ever a time that I felt betrayed? What did that feel like for me? Oh, it felt like a hot knife stabbing me in the back and being twisted, and it felt like my stomach just fell out from underneath me. So then instead of saying, well, I remember a time when I felt like a knife got stuck in my back, you don't say that. You don't make it about you. You just say, does it feel like a knife got shoved in your back and was twisted, and then your stomach felt like it was going to fall out from underneath you? How did I do that? Well, I tapped into what it felt like. I contemplated what, and then I asked, is that what it feels like for you? Now, one of two things will happen. Your partner will either say, no, it feels like, and then describe something else, or your partner will say, yes, that's exactly what it feels like. But either way, you've now been able to connect with what it feels like. And I want you to hear what your partner says. Like, yes, it feels like a knife, a red hot scalding knife in my back, twisted, and then I feel like I am itchy all over. And I'm hearing that, I'm like, whoa, because I connected with what that feels like for me. That's awful. And I hate that you're feeling that way. I'm so sad that you're feeling that way. Thank you for sharing that with me. Those kind of things. So that's um, that's what happens. Now, what will hijack that is what you said, Patrick, which is shame and fear. Shame will hijack your capacity for empathy every time. Because the second thing that happens when I'm watching these guys do this is as their wives are telling them how much they hurt and how excruciating it is immediately what I call the judge shows up and starts saying to the guy, what a piece of crap husband you are. Look at all the things you've done. You've caused this. You are horrible. You are no good. And what the guy does is begins shrinking and falling into themselves and just feeling so bad that I hurt you. I hurt you. And so I have to give a prompt like, don't go into shame right now. Because the irony is, if you go into shame, what the shadows of shame do is they make it all about you. So here your partner's hurting, needs your love, needs your support, and I'm making it all about me in that moment. And so I have to remind myself, okay, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. I can see your pain. I'm holding space for you and breathing through it. And yes, it is uncomfortable. That's until you learn how to do it, and then it gets a little better. So at the bottom line, you're afraid that you're going to lose her, and so your fear and your shame will interfere with that. So you are enough. You actually do have what it takes. You might need to practice the skills of empathy, just like you need to practice how to throw a ball or play the piano or do some woodworking or whatever other else you do in your life. You're going to have to practice that. But being willing to lean into the discomfort of just holding space will be huge.
So I'm going to ask about with the first one where it says it's like a catch-22. You know, I talk about a negative two-step. You know, you do this, I do this, you do this, I do this, and it's like it doesn't change. So I wonder if you said, can we problem solve this together because we're in this pattern, and you can keep doing that honestly for years or decades. But are we willing to try something different and having the conversation? And you don't have to do it perfectly or even right the first time. If you try something different, if it helps, great. If it doesn't, you go, okay, when things are calm, that wasn't exactly the result we were looking for. What else can we try? You know, but having it be but it's also identifying before it gets to be the full blown, you know, like catching it, you know, it's like triggers. Catching them when they're trigger is not when I've already acted out and I'm, you know, having to report a slip or a relapse. So it's, you know, identifying that space. And both of you probably, if you do a little work on that, can identify, I'm starting to feel, and maybe it's like, oh, we're starting to go there. Maybe we just need to sit and think about what's happening within our bodies. That would take things, you know, out of the we're headed towards the rage moment, and we're going to, you know, be separated for a day and a half, and we're doing this in front of the children, all of those things. But nothing changes if nothing changes. But if something changes, then you have a chance to do things differently. So, but you know, like trying to do this when in the heat of the moment never works. I've never heard one person that was successful with it. So it really is, can we together come up with a plan? You know, you had said you're working with a therapist, so that would be, can we come up with a plan with our couples therapist, you know, so that we aren't doing this negative dance? Okay, so the next one is, I'm in recovery from SA and believe a lot of my behavior, betraying spouse and all other committed relationships, stems from being cheated on by my first love 17 years ago. This was a very traumatic experience for me. I feel my behavior to betray is a way to protect myself from that feeling of being betrayed again. Are there exercises I can do to address this 17-year-old wound?
Yes, well, okay, not to be boastful because I hate that, but there's this really good book written by this guy called
Named
Finding
Troy
Peace.
Love. Yeah. And
Uh,
I will boast for you. It's really good. I personally done the work with it too. I find it even at this point in my recovery to be super helpful. So there's your side boast.
Thank you. So there's several exercises in that book. You can get it on Amazon that have that. There's also a retreat that we're doing in October in Texas that is happening, that you could come to, and there's other places. But here's the deal. You have a huge betrayal wound, and what did you end up coming to believe about yourself 17 years ago because your partner cheated on you? That I'm not enough, that I'm not worthy of anybody being faithful to me, that nobody wants me. And so when you look at that, and then you look at the way that you've tried to counter those negative core beliefs by cheating, I'm going to find somebody who wants me. I'm going to find somebody who values me. I'm going to find somebody who is willing to risk everything to have a relationship with me, even though I'm risking everything to have a relationship with them. But what it's trying to do, and it never works, what it was trying to do is prove that you actually are enough. But the reason why it doesn't work is because it goes against your value system. And in the process, you end up hurting your partner. And so you are bombarded with shame that says, see, you are a piece of trash. You're not enough. Nobody really wants you. Your partner can't even trust you. And your brain learned, well, I kind of know what I can do to at least feel better for a minute. And so it becomes this cycle of getting trapped in that. So you asked, what can you do? First, I want to honor you for figuring that out. You got a betrayal wound. So what do you do with any other wound? Do you ignore it? You got a bone sticking out of your arm. We just ignore it and say, well, whatever, it's fine. Or do you start to do things to help treat the wound? Self-compassion, groups, going to therapy, journaling, going to 12-step, whatever that is for you. I can't tell you, but you've said, okay, look, I got this betrayal wound. It's been 17 years. What can I do? We talked about EMDR earlier. That's a beautiful way for some people, or brain spotting, the cousin of EMDR. Both of those are beautiful ways of dealing with past trauma that's been around for a while. And the nice thing for that, for a lot of people, is it doesn't take a ton of sessions to deal with that. It can be pretty quick. But those are some of the thoughts that I have.
And I was like, I don't, so this is part of the fabric of your story, but lots of people get cheated on and don't automatically become an SA. And so understanding parts of the why, but I suspect there's more underneath. There was already, a setup for this. So getting help on this specific thing, because you identified it, but I suspect as you do the work, there'll be more layers. And, I've been in recovery a long time, and honestly, Troy's work, just since I've started working with him, doing these things and other aspects, I've had more opportunity to go, oh yeah, and it's okay. We absolutely can. You continue to do the layers, but the stuff that is the really, poking a lot, getting help on those specific things, and EMDR is very much an item. It isn't, I'm going to remove all the trauma in all of my life in a couple of EMDR sessions. I called it my white hat rage. And, I went and I got help on that specific issue, and honestly did not have, this is just me, but it was amazingly successful for me. And I haven't experienced that again since I did that work. Great. That doesn't mean there aren't other angers and things like that, but you have more opportunity. So, okay. You are going to show something. So
just somebody said they didn't see the title of the book, so there it is right there.
Oh, thank you. Finding Peace hit my doorstep last week. Time to crack it open. Yes. Haven't you found, Troy, that like having a book sitting next to you, it doesn't help? Like, I don't know why that is. I always was hopeful that it'd just be the osmosis of, well, it's there, so I'm glad I'm being a little, but yes, I'm glad you're going to crack it open. So Oh, there you go. I didn't find the title of the work just mentioned, so there you go. And again, this is all, this work is what he uses for betrayed partners on alternating Thursdays on our platform, and for the guys weekly, in a drop-in group, so very different. But he also does work groups, on our platform. Those are the 6-week, courses, low cost, but fee-based. The drop-in groups are free. So the, well, and I will share. I went to his in-person retreat, and like I knew abandonment, but there was another one that I didn't know, that I hadn't really identified, and I was like, but it's good to know. And then how the judge shows up. The one I did not want was the martyr, and guess what? That showed up on my little thing, and it's all okay, and I get, to the point where I go, huh, but what I find is, okay, that's showing up, and I have the ability to choose. Then if I have a name for it, I can choose rather than just going down the not so merry path, leaning into that. So I'm long-winded. I'm really grateful for your work. I truly am.
Oh,
So
thank you. If you are going to use the book, I can tell you what some people have done. They get a group of, they create a book club, really. That's one way to do it. So I'm sure your neighbors would be so excited to unpack all their wounds with you, but but you find some people who are willing to do it with you. I've heard of many groups, book clubs, who've done that together, and then so that's one way to do it, which you don't have to do it alone. You'll hear the preface of my dear buddy Matt Wheeler, who also does some drop-in groups around here, will tell you, please don't do this by yourself. Please have somebody with you. So find someone to do it with you. And then we do have we have groups and stuff that you can also come join us. So
well,
but
yeah, if you're cracking open the book, we've got drop-in groups.
that's
Join
right.
them, and you go, oh, I read this. What does this mean? Or, oh, I read this, and wow, whatever it is, it's your truth. But yeah, do lean into the support.
The name of the book is Finding Peace by me. So if you go to Amazon and you type in Finding Peace Troy Love, you will see it.
It's also listed on our website. We've got books, and it is prevalent on there. And then he's got a different workbook that is associated with our course. So that would be, another workbook, but that one is associated with doing the work group. So, he said, do this together. Well, there's a great way to do it together, is, in a work group. So other questions? We've got some time left.
We usually run out of quite a
I
time.
know we run out of time, so.
So good. So I did say that we are doing the retreat in Texas. I don't, if there's anybody who wants to go, we still have space there.
Do you have the dates?
It is October 11th through the 15th. It's in Palestine, Texas, which is, looks like it's spelled Palestine, but apparently they don't say it like that in Texas. So it's halfway between Houston and Dallas. So it's on that road between the two, in a beautiful place there. We're going to be doing that. So if you would like to come to that, we'd love to have you. It is co-ed, which we always debate whether or not to do it that way. But we found that seems to be the most effective way of doing that. We've thought about doing it just for men or just for women, but we haven't made a decision about that.
So let's talk about, if I'm in a couple and I want to come, because you and I've talked about that before. What are your thoughts on that?
We have had couples come. It's not a couples retreat, but we have had couples come. We've actually had siblings come, which is actually interesting too. So the way that it's structured, you're doing your work. You're attending to your wounds, but having your partner there who's going along with you on this experience is really helpful. like, because you have a shared experience that you can go home. But when we break out into smaller groups and things like that, the spouse goes in one group and you go in the other group, but you still are experiencing the same thing.
So this in person would be through I can't remember the name of it's Finding
Finding
Peace
Peace
Retreats.
Consulting,
Consulting. Okay.
findingpeaceconsulting.com, or you can go to findingpeaceretreat.com. It should link you to where you go. So findingpeaceretreat.com or findingpeaceconsulting.com. Look at the events page.
Yeah. And if you can't find it, email me and I'll send you a link, because I can pull that up. So, but yeah, it's under Finding Peace. So, and like I said, as a personal attendee, you are put into, you get into smaller groups that you are working through. So, if I went with my sibling, I wouldn't be in the same small group with my sibling, but the ability to, process through. And I didn't, like I said, I knew some of them before I went, and I was like, oh, there's more. But that's an opportunity. Like with all of these things, it's an opportunity. The more work I do on healing those deeper wounds, the more healing and freedom I get to experience. So the next question is, can you talk about ways of building truth in a relationship?
I mean, it probably means trust, building trust in a relationship. Well, first and
Probably,
foremost,
yeah. Truth
number
and
one
trust.
thing,
It's kind of both.
right? Don't lie.
Yeah.
That's number one. Don't lie. Tell the truth. There's so many times where I remember when I was very first in the drug and alcohol rehab program, while I was doing my internship at the Allegheny, whatever the name is, in Pittsburgh somewhere. And the addicts would come in and they would tell us how they couldn't tell their partner that they had relapsed because they were so afraid that it was going to hurt their partner. And then the therapist is like, bullshit, beep.
Yes.
You are only worried about you. You were worried about you. And I was like, whoa, that's probably true. So there's a fear that if I tell you the truth, you're gonna reject me. But the truth is, if you find out that I lied to you, you're gonna reject me. So so that would be rule number one: don't lie. Rule number two: if you make a commitment, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So follow through on what you say you're going to do. So if your spouse says, honey, will you take the garbage out? And you say yes, and 3 days later, the garbage is still not taken out, well, they're not going to trust you. So it's little things like that that make a difference. So tell the truth, follow through on what you say, and don't commit to something that you can't do. So oftentimes we'll say, oh yeah, I can do that, when I didn't actually think about, can I do that? And so now I've made a commitment that I actually can't keep. And so now I have to backtrack. So those are probably the two, I wouldn't say easy, but the simplest ways to build truth. Build trust is to stop lying and keep your commitments. Those two things will go a long way.
Well, and I love that our residential treatment program is called Seeking Integrity. We strive for that. We are human. We aren't perfect. But like, tell the truth. And at our treatment program, we say, tell the truth and tell it faster. And, if we have, lies of omission or commission, we show back, hey, Troy, when I said that, 10 minutes ago, that wasn't the truth. Here's what it is. I was afraid of your reaction. I didn't want to hurt your feeling, whatever it was. It's usually about me. I don't want to have to deal with your negative reaction. So, but I'm telling the truth. That goes a long way. It's like a partner is going to go, oh, I don't love that you lied to me 10 minutes ago, but I do appreciate and see a change that you are now willing to show up. And yes, with the trash, if you, why didn't you take out the trash? Well, I'm going to. Well, it's 3 days ago, but I'm still going to. We're really quick to deflect, and so if we're going to build trust, it's like, yes, you say what we mean what we say, and it takes time. Trust is rebuilt over time. It's the consistency of showing up and doing the right thing. You don't get a gold star for doing it once. So, okay, next question. I love this one. I hadn't thought about this. At what age would it be good to start the Finding Peace workbook with kids? And like, let's think about how would you even, like, I'm not sure if you give them a workbook. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've been asked whether or not I would write a workbook for kids, and I've thought about how I would do that, and I haven't come up with an idea yet. My experience has been that even though these wounds are being created while we're kids and teenagers, we don't recognize that they're being created until we're in our 20s and 30s a lot of times. So some kids don't have the maturity to understand the wound. Now some of them a little bit different, like your best friend made fun of you or something, betrayal or rejection. Some of those you can talk about with them and say, okay, so that's called the rejection wound. And so I don't know if I would have them do the workbook per se when I've been working with teenagers, and it depends on their level of maturity, to be honest. But when I'm working with teenagers, I will use the language, and so they have words they can use to talk about that. But I don't necessarily do the workbook. Like, so what do you end up believing about yourself when rejections being stirred up, when you've been made fun of at school? What can you do to like remind yourself that you're enough? Those kind of things. You can still use the language, but I guess I'll have to write a workbook for kids.
There you go. Add it to your very busy list. But I think here's the difference. Like, you just shared, you're having a conversation with your kids. The wounds are less, I mean, like the inability to express, stuff is how they get kind of, I feel, trapped in us. So I think, having the ability to have the discussion with your kids that your emotions are your emotions, and we'll talk through them. You don't have to be stuck with them, and they're okay, and you are, all of those things. You are worthy of having your feelings, that can be the shift, so that they don't have to be harboring, these deep wounds. So the next question is a longer one. Looking for suggestions on how to handle a situation that occurred yesterday. My husband and I were scheduled for couples therapy yesterday, and he did not sign on to our virtual session. I've been trying to back off cueing him, reminding him, etc., about healing work that is needed. Thus, I did not call or text him to remind him of the session. Our therapist was in support of letting him be responsible to show up for sessions without me reminding him. When I addressed him missing the session yesterday, it immediately got spun around to me as trying to set him up for failure, that he would never do that to me, etc. I asked him to please own the fact that he missed the session and help him understand that his partial work and history of skipping some of his individual sessions had created a lot of mistrust, continuing to compound upon 10 years of betrayals. This will likely come up in conversation again, and I just don't know how to move forward. Now I feel bad for not, and now I feel bad for not reminding him. I was like,
Well,
wow, that worked. He got you to feel bad. So yeah,
I'm really glad you didn't remind him,
yes,
and I hope you don't remind him next time.
yes.
So what I'm hearing is that immediately you said he got spun around, turned it on you, which means that there's a lot of shame coming up for him, and shame will prevent me from owning my mistakes, because I will. If I admit that I made a mistake, then the belief is then I'm also admitting that I'm a piece of beep. So I'm not going to admit that, because then I'd have to admit that. So I wasn't there, so I can't watch what's happening. But if he said, I would never do that to you, I might respond with, you would never do that to me? Repeating the last 3 to 5 words that he said. You'd never do that to me? No. Well, that's interesting, because you did. I missed you. I missed you yesterday. I missed you earlier today. You weren't there. So having some empathy with that. But what I'm hearing is kind of what I was saying, like, keep your commitments and follow through, and he's not doing that. So the challenge is you're trying to hold him accountable without trying to be his mom, and he's not following through. So the consequence of that is, well, honey, I don't trust you. I want to trust you, but I don't. I don't trust that you are going to follow through on your commitments. And I'm no longer going to remind you because I don't want to be your mom. And just saying, like, if you want this relationship to work, you're going to have to start owning some stuff. I'm not trying to blame you. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. But if you want this to work, you're going to have to own some stuff because I'm not going to be your mom and remind you of this anymore. So own it or don't. But that's, if we're going to fix this, you got to take some responsibility here.
Yeah, and I was thinking, on my little phone, I can put calendar reminders of everything. I put reminders of like 15 minutes before, a day ahead, an hour ahead, whatever it is I need based on whatever that time is. And I know for sure that addicts, if it's something that they really, really, really want to do, they can use the technology to make it happen. So to me, I think my biggest thing is, you know, and now I feel bad for not reminding him. Please don't take that on. Like to me, I was like, that would be such addict manipulation. Oh yes, I got her to feel bad about that, and now I don't have to feel bad because it's really her fault. That's called blame shifting. I agree with Troy and your therapist. Nope, it's he's an adult. He's not 5. He doesn't need to be reminded to get his lunchbox to go to school. So this is one of those where you're showing up as the adult. Just do your work, and it sounds like you're doing great work for you. So just, but yeah, don't buy into the guilt and blame, please. Okay, next one. I am a betrayed spouse about 8 weeks since D-Day. The PA has gone cold turkey and so far has been committed to that. How can I stop being hyper-vigilant? Don't. He's going cold turkey and he's not, you don't say he's doing any work. So don't be take care of you, but I'm sorry, but like,
That's okay.
he's not trustworthy.
It's only been 8 weeks since you found
Yes.
out. So of course you're going to be hyper vigilant, and you're probably going to be hyper vigilant for a while. When you've been betrayed, your brain automatically does that in order to protect yourself from being hurt again. So the part of what you're going to need is time, along with him behaving himself out of the problem that he got himself into. So him demonstrating that he can be trusted and doing that consistently for a while. So being kind to yourself. Now, there are some extremes of hypervigilance that are not healthy. Dr. Weiss has the Prodependent book that you might want to use, and we do have some drop-in groups for the partners. There are some things that we do out of our hypervigilance that are not healthy, but understanding and being compassionate that the ground has been ripped out from under me. I'm going to be looking around and asking lots of questions, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I'm typing in the chat. There's a Porn Addiction 101 starting the 5th of October online work group. He'd have a 3-circle plan. There's 12-step groups. You can email me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com, but there's a list of them on our site too. And there's PA, PAA, SPAA. So there's separate for porn, SCA. I mean, there's lots of different 12-step groups. I know SAA and SLA are most common. That said, there's a lot of other groups that could be a better fit. I'm glad you're here. But healthy boundaries for you. We've got lots of information for you on that too. There's a drop-in group for betrayed partners starting again. So check those out. And but yeah, so I mentioned dry drunk, earlier, and it's like somebody just stopping the behavior is abstinent. That's it. I just have stopped the problematic behavior. Sobriety is I'm starting to learn how to do things differently. Recovery takes, literally, a couple of years of doing the right things most of the time, getting help and support. I'm traveling. I went to a 12-step meeting while I'm traveling. I've been in recovery for a long time. I want to stay on this journey because it's so much better. So him getting the help to be on this path, not just stopping the problematic behavior, because that leads to relapse or switching to another form of acting out. But yeah, take care of you. Okay, next one, Troy, is as an SA, I find it difficult to go to 12-step groups. I feel like I need to connect to people and I don't feel connection in the groups, but it's in my wife's safety plan. And what can I do instead to help her feel safe? I will reiterate, out of state, and I went to a 12-step meeting, and guess what? I connected with all of those people, even though, I don't know any of them, that isn't, so it's, I connected on an emotional basis because they were sharing stories that resonated with me. So there's always opportunities to connect. Troy.
That some people are turned away by and different 12-step meetings have different structures, okay? But some people are turned away from 12-step because of the rigidity of the structure, which is part of why we've created the drop-in groups. So those are a whole lot more interactive. Yes, they're online, but that makes it convenient. But they're a whole lot more interactive, and they don't have some of that structure that the 12 steps do. Some people need the structure that's helpful for them, and some people that doesn't work. Some people get caught up in the higher power thing, but there are groups that don't require you to have a higher power. So, but the drop-in groups, we have drop-in groups every day in Seeking Integrity for addicts every day. So if that's something that your wife feels would be better for you, or would still hit her safety plan, I'd have a dialogue with her about that. You can also try different 12-step groups because they have different feel, different experiences. So try some, see if you like one better than another. Don't make a decision just on attending maybe the same one a couple of times and like, I don't feel it. Go to different ones. There's like a million brands of 12-step groups out there. So
Yes, and they're listed. I mean, we have the whole bunch on our site. So, okay, my partner uses his ADHD as an excuse for his lack of consistency and rejection sensitivity. Won't take meds because he abuses them. He has the task of saying good morning and good night daily, but he gives up because I don't say back with a welcoming as a feeling he wants. And so he stops, which reinforces my belief that he won't change. It's a vicious cycle. Took 19 months to get disclosure, and now it's going on 7 months for restitution and him sharing what he is committed to being now.
well, ADHD is a thing, and it is challenging. And the older we're discovering that the older we get with ADHD, the less our brain works. So that's also a challenge. So he's owning that he has ADHD, but it's kind of like, oh, I have diabetes, and that's why I can't do this or that. Well, okay. So you have a limitation, but if you use that as your reason why you don't do things, that's not going to work. Um, we just had a I just had a young man who was an Eagle Scout in our scout troop, whose left arm got caught in a conveyor belt and it was ripped off. And so now for the rest of his life, he doesn't. And he sent a thank you note to the boys for sending them goodies while he's in the hospital. He's like, at the beginning, the thought was, I can't do anything because I don't have a left arm anymore. And now it's like, let me figure out how I can do that. So it's just a mindset change, which he may or may not want to do. There's a lot of things that you can do to treat ADHD without meds. There's a ton of podcasts for adults with ADHD that you might want to listen to. There's some coaches out there who help with that. So you aren't his mom, so you can't make him. But you can let him know that his failure to take responsibility for his healthcare is impacting your ability to connect with him, which then makes you not want to say good morning so friendly as he wants you to. So can he own that he plays a role in that and stop blaming you, hopefully?
I shared with somebody who was in our treatment program because he said, well, I have ADHD. And I said, then you need to set up all of the, calendar reminders and like it's on you. It's not an excuse. You will have to work harder at this. So it's a little more challenging, but like you're sharing with the young man who lost his arm, it's going to be a little more challenging for him, but he's going to figure out how to do it. So you're just giving into the, I got ADHD. Do you know how many addicts have ADHD? Like there's a higher correlation of ADHD within the addiction community, whatever form it's taking. So if everybody used that as an excuse, there would be a whole bunch of people in recovery that wouldn't be in recovery because I have mild ADHD. But you know what? I I have lots of systems in place to help me do life and recovery. So it's, but for you, I'm going to healthy boundaries for you. You're not his parent, so healthy boundaries for you. And he, but I feel so sorry for you. It's such a long journey, and for him to be so unwilling and digging his heels in. I have a little picture thing. I like quotes and things, and it says sometimes when you're stuck, it's because you want to be. And so this feels like I want to be stuck because I want to use my ADHD as an excuse so I don't have to do the work, but
Oh yeah.
but that doesn't mean you have to be stuck. You can take care of you, and it creates more of a gap, but it's because he's unwilling to do the things he needs to do to change. So Troy, thank you so much. And again,
You're
check out
welcome.
all the resources. Troy is online with the guys on Friday, alternating Thursdays with Betrayed Partners. So check all those resources out. Lots of help for for these issues. So take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.